Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're in the other Mountain or Pacific time zones. Welcome to the latest Collision Hub and AirPro Diagnostics webinar. Today we've got Josh McFarlin from AirPro Diagnostics and Barry Dorn from Dorn's Body and Paint. And we're going to have a little conversation about the tool or the tech, which is more important. I think there continues to be some confusion around, what level of expertise does a technician need to have? What types of tools do I need to have when we're talking about collision repair diagnostics? So that's what I want to touch base on today. So I'm Jason Bartanen from Collision Hub, and maybe Josh and Barry could just do a quick introduction of yourselves, and we'll get underway.
Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, hey guys, this is Barry Dorn with Dorn's Body and Paint in Richmond, Virginia.
And Josh McFarlin, Vice President of Operations here at AirPro Diagnostics. Happy to be here. Thanks,
Awesome.
Jason.
And we're happy to have you back again, Josh. We've done a number of these AirPro Diagnostics webinars with our friends from AirPro, and we're excited for this one today and looking forward to having a shop owner on here today and talk a little bit about how this collision repair diagnostics affects shops on a day-to-day basis. What we wanted to do today is kind of walk through the repair process from that initial blueprinting and damage analysis process through the repair itself, calibrations and aiming, and then that post-repair inspection, kind of a quality control or test drives that we're doing, and just kind of talk about why it's important to not only have the proper tooling, the capable tooling to perform the repairs, but also a capable technician, and what exactly that kind of looks like when it comes to the technician. It's not as simple as just plugging in the machine and pushing a button. I think that we're making some advancements on that part of it, but I still do think that there's some people that thinks it is just that easy, but we certainly know that it isn't. So I guess let's start with that blueprinting process, right, guys? So when the vehicle comes in and we're going to start doing our initial damage analysis process, why is it important to have not only a qualified technician but also capable tooling at that step in the process? I don't know who wants to take that first, but why don't we let's talk about that for a little bit.
Barry, you're the guest of honor. You want to start?
Sure. So, I guess you have to look at what's changed. In other words, when I first started, and even up to probably three or four years ago, we would just pull the car in and start tearing it down and start getting after it immediately. To go through the documentation process, look the vehicle over, to go over with the technicians, and the repair planner, air blueprinter would then devise a plan on what we needed to do. Problem was that there was a ton of things that we were missing. So then that's when the OEs kept coming out with you have to do a pre and a post scan to know what's wrong with the vehicle. And when you really stop and look at it, that's exactly what the mechanical and service departments do each day. And unfortunately, we as collision repairers don't seem to, we've never really done that, unfortunately. We just start fixing the car. Or start tearing it down. So the first thing you have to do is, again, perform your pre-scan, and then the next thing is to pull up the OE procedures to see what it is you actually have to do. So problem is, and this is what we've seen, is that if you don't have the right person that's doing that, an experienced technician, that makes that a lot harder. That's why from our side, we're lucky to have a full-blown service department. We actually have our service technicians do it because they're used to it. They know it. They know what to look for. They know the tooling. They know the equipment. And even at that, we still have to rely on the professionals at AirPro to help guide us through that process, because it's just so many different layers and so many different OEM requirements. So that's a lot of what we do, and honestly, a lot of what's changed. And I think that's the key critical thing that I think a lot of shops miss, is that as much as that it's new to us, it's not new to the automotive industry.
So Barry, do you have a specific person on your staff that's involved in that process every time? Is it something where it depends on the day or the time of day or whatever? How does that work for you?
So how we do it is we have one person that does it, and of course he has a backup in the event that he's sick or on vacation or what have you. But we have one person that does it, and he's from the service side of our business. He's not from He's not a detailer. He's not a repair planner, that type of thing. And that's all he does is basically pre and post scans, and occasionally, if he's not doing them, he'll perform them in alignment or something of that nature. But basically, that's all he does is pre and post scans and work with you guys at AirPro. That's all he does now.
Sure.
Now, Barry, what are some of the issues that might happen if, again, you're using a technician that's got a little bit more experience in that area? What are some of the things that might happen? Maybe if I'm using a technician that isn't as familiar with, the diagnostic process and DTCs and looking for information. What are some of the things I might find myself stepping into if I don't have the right technician on the job?
No, that's a great question that unfortunately I can speak to firsthand. Initially, years ago when we first started doing this, I say years ago, it's only about 4 or 5 years ago that we really started the pre and post scan to every car. We didn't utilize a service technician. We were actually utilizing a repair process manager or estimator, if you will. And that didn't go well. It didn't go. They don't grasp, because that's not their job. They've never dealt with scan tools. They've never dealt with, the electronics of vehicles or codes or anything like that. So that was honestly, guys, that was a nightmare. We had cars that were not being properly diagnosed, and it was a lot of frustration. It was a lot of issues. So within a few months, we had to change that all around, because it did not go well at all.
You start to see a few surprises along the way, I would imagine.
And at the end, when you don't want to see the surprise.
Right. I know we use a lot of analogies when we talk about, diagnostics. I keep hearing, like physician analogies. The one I like to use is like three-dimensional measuring, right? If I don't take the time to three-dimensionally measure the vehicle, it's not possible for me to identify all of the damage that's on the vehicle. From a technician standpoint, if that technician doesn't know how to take those three-dimensional measurements, I'm going to get bad data. And Josh, if I'm using the wrong equipment, I'm going to get bad data. Again, same thing with, just like if I'm not making the three-dimensional measurement, if I'm using the equipment improperly, or if the equipment isn't capable, I'm going to run into issues. So, kind of same question to you that I asked Barry, like, what are some of the issues that might arise if I'm not using a tool that's capable of what we need to do during the blueprinting process?
Sure. I mean, I think that analogy, we've talked a little bit about, welding, wheel alignments. I mean, there's a number of different ones that we can kind of pick apart, but let's stick with 3D measuring for a moment. And I mean, you guys both know my background. Not everybody on the call does, but I mean, I started off as a technician years ago, but on the mechanical side of things, I've spent time using diagnostic tools throughout the years. And while I worked for iCar for a number of years, I am not somebody that should be using a three-dimensional measuring system. Now, could I engage with the interface and possibly get some measurements and maybe even get some of those measurements correctly? I suspect I could. I can follow instructions and click on the button. But as soon as something isn't going the way it's supposed to go, one, I'm probably going to have a hard time correcting for it. And two, I'm probably not going to recognize that it's not going the way it's supposed to go. So let's put that into scan tool examples. If we're using the latest, greatest software, whatever that may be, whether it's the OE software, whether it's an up-to-date aftermarket software, whatever tool you might be using, if you're using that tool and something isn't going correctly, and you're dealing with a vehicle that's been in a collision incident of some sort, how do you determine whether the tool isn't performing correctly or whether the vehicle isn't performing correctly if you don't really even recognize to begin with that something's not right? So for example, if you've got your repair planner, Barry, that's going through and using the tool and the ABS module isn't responding, your repair planner may not recognize that the ABS module should be responding.
Sure.
and that it's a standard piece of equipment that's been there for a large number of years. It's there, it's just not responding. So is that the software didn't perform correctly? Is it a hardware issue where there's a pin in your DLC that's damaged? Or is it actually a problem with the ABS module in the vehicle and communication with the ABS module? If you don't know to look for that, and you don't know to dig into that and try and figure out what's going on, you're just missing things. And so you could think that you've got, a clean bill of health because no other DTCs came back, and you just didn't recognize that it's an issue, that ABS didn't respond. Maybe the assumption was it's not equipped. The tool doesn't tell you, hey, this vehicle should be equipped necessarily. It just says it didn't respond. So how do you, what do you do from there? So yeah, it's important that the technician, the operator of the diagnostic tool, knows how to problem solve for that, knows how to maybe try some different things. If they've got more than one tool in their toolbox, so to speak, they can back up and come at it from a different approach. If we circle back to three-dimensional measuring, let's say that you've got a good three-dimensional measuring electronic system of some sort, insert brand name here, and it's not performing correctly. The technician that knows what they're doing and knows how to gather those measurements can get out another tool. They can get out a tram bar, right, and they can start taking measurements, through a different method in order to achieve the result that they're looking for. But the technician that doesn't know that, they're stuck because the tool left them, in a lurch, and they maybe didn't even realize.
Josh, I couldn't agree with you more. There was a time where I probably wouldn't have, but now I could not agree with you more. The technician has got to be experienced not only with doing your vehicle scanning and pre and post scans and calibrations. They've got to be familiar with it because there's so many variables. I have one comes to mind on the Mercedes that this was back then where we had our repair planners doing it, and they didn't go far enough down the tree to they were just clearing codes at the top. That's really all they were doing. I think that's the mistake that most shops make. The person doing it is just clearing codes. They're not fixing anything. And we were getting ready to deliver a Mercedes that the headlights did not work because the control module had gotten damaged. The headlights were fine, but the control module was damaged. So we didn't see it because we didn't go far enough down. We didn't open up enough modules because we didn't know what we don't know. So no, I could not agree with you more. And Jason and Josh both, Jason, the base of the machine did right behind you. I can't imagine putting someone on that machine that doesn't have experience with it. And when you do say that, that's speaking to me as a collision repairer. That when you say to me that hey, don't let an unexperienced technician get on a structural type of machine, I couldn't agree more. That is the same analogy here. That I think that we as shop owners and managers, we think that we're just simply clearing codes, and we're not. We're in a whole new world that is completely different than what we're used to. We're used to being able to hit one button or pull off one part and make that difference. That is not what we have here. Those flow charts that we have to go through that we just frankly, unfortunately, are not used to. So I couldn't agree with you both more on that.
Now,
good analogies.
Along the same lines of that capable tooling. So again, Josh, I think that we've seen multiple examples over the years of not catching all those modules, as you mentioned. What does AirPro do to make sure that we're getting all those modules when we're using your equipment?
First and foremost, we're going to keep coming back to the technician, right?
Yep.
So first and foremost, we've got a technician that is experienced working with that vehicle. I've made this comment before in some of our other webinars. I'll say it again. I don't think I can say it too many times. I don't have a technician here at AirPro that I would expect to accurately scan and diagnose every single vehicle that comes across our board. And the reason for that is because it's not a reasonable expectation.
Yep.
that they can just scan and diagnose and know their way around every software, every vehicle, every electronic architecture, if you will, Even if you just go to the fact that the systems are all called different things,
Right. Right.
you know, it just leave it at that high level. You know, what you're looking for the ECM. Well, on this vehicle, it's called a PCM. On that vehicle, it's something different. And that might be a simple example, but it just gets further and further complicated as you add more vehicles to the mix. So, first and foremost, having a technician that knows what to expect from that vehicle is really critical. They should be able to look at the make and model and trim level and know that these systems are very likely to be present. These are the types of communications that I should be finding, et cetera. Next, so now you've got this technician that knows all of that. Let's give them multiple tools in their toolbox.
Right.
Let's give them more than one way to interact with that vehicle, and that's what we do. We give them different versions of different software so that they can approach it from multiple different angles. If this software isn't working, they can back up to an earlier version because maybe the latest release has a bug in it, or they can move forward to the next version. They can change around their tools. That wrench doesn't fit. Let me grab a different wrench.
Right.
And come at it a different way. The other analogy along those lines, and maybe we can kind of get through this one as well, is okay. So I've got a Toyota, and I'm driving down the road, and the check engine light comes on, or maybe one of the ADAS systems isn't performing correctly, or whatever, and I want to stop and get it fixed. I'm going to take it to a dealership. So I pull into a Ford dealer, and I pull into the service drive, and I say, hey, I've got my brand new 2020 Toyota Camry. Can you help me out with an ADAS calibration and the check engine light? What are they going to tell me?
You need to go somewhere else.
Right. Take that down the road.
Right.
Well, it's a dealership. They're trained technicians. They've got the latest and greatest tools.
Right.
Well, they don't have the right tools and the right experience to help me with my vehicle that day. And so they're going to send me down the road. Maybe if I get lucky, they're going to send me back to their used car department or to the collision shop that might have actually more tools and more experience to help me with my Toyota, but the service shop won't be able to do it.
No, good point.
Yeah,
And
I like that one a lot too.
Good one.
I'm going to steal that one from you, Josh, if you don't mind.
well,
Too.
I stole it from one of my colleagues here at AirPro. So
Okay. Well, and speaking of
pass it
stealing
along.
things, since we're stealing things, and like in that same vein, you were talking about, again, not expecting your staff technicians to know every make, model, year, vehicle, be able to do everything. Mark Allen from Audi, I butcher his quote, the exact quote of it, so I'm kind of paraphrasing, but essentially saying, the things have changed so much now that we as technicians, we as shop owners, we need to have the courage to recognize that we can't do everything, and that's okay.
Right.
We can take a step back. We need to really look at what we're really capable of doing and doing well, and recognize that we can't repair everything. So I think that we're heading in that direction. I want more people to recognize that, hopefully. Now going back to you mentioned the dealership, and that's a good segue for a question that we've got that came through on Facebook that maybe we can offer some tips on. What are the best ways to educate the dealer shops to back up collision needs for calibration and safety inspections? We hear that all the time, right? Well,
Yeah.
Whether it's the shop calling a dealership, whether it's the insurer calling a dealership, well, I talk to the dealership and they say this doesn't need to be done.
Right.
How do you deal with that, Barry?
So, I mean, that's a great point. And I want to say to Josh's point a minute ago that, and just a little segment I'm in, and that's right, Josh, I couldn't agree more with you that we as collision repairers have been taught for years, we should be able to do everything, no matter what it is. Just pick the spectrum, we should be able to do it. And those days are gone. That's a great analogy on the Ford dealer trying to diagnose the Toyota. I didn't use any example there, but I could not agree with more. We just have been trained for all of these years. You never say no. And I think that's a problem. We have to learn how to say no, and we have to learn how to know that that may be on their scope at the moment. That means that they'll be out of our scope once we get trained, but until then. So, Jason, back to your question, we get that point all the time. The third party payer, the insurer, whomever, calls XYZ dealership and goes, hey, I'm trying to see if you guys, if this car's been hitting the left front, or just simply put, the mirror was knocked off. That's it. There's nothing else wrong with the car. Do you need to do a blindside recalibrate? And inevitably, and it's gotten better over the past year or two, but still not there. I mean, it's I'd say 85% of the time, the person they speak to has no clue what they're referring to, because these are folks that diagnose service-related issues.
Yep.
So they're not usually dealing with a mirror that's been knocked off and the blind side is not going to work anymore, and nothing's going to work correctly, because we all know it's all tied into one software, to one unit. But the ability for all of us to simply call up the dealer who we think is going to know it, by and large, doesn't deal with that. We're on two totally opposite sides of the fence. A lot of times, we're working on 21 model vehicles that the dealer has never even seen for service yet. And we're calling them to ask what they think. If we can't find the procedure, if we can't find the calibration requirements, we're calling them and they don't know. And unfortunately, rather than say, hey, let me look that up, Mr. Mrs. Insurer or a third party payer, it's just, no, we don't do that. And then we're looked upon as the repairer, as the bad guys here, because we're trying to rip someone off. And that's not the case. We just, because we own the liability, if something goes wrong, we just want to make sure that the customer's safe, the vehicle is back to prior loss calibrations, and move on to the next one.
I think you just have to, getting to the question that came from Facebook from Anthony, I think you just have to spend the time and develop a relationship with that dealer, and help them to understand why it's in their best interest to take on that work, that there's a revenue stream for them. No differently, you're taking on the work because there's a revenue stream in it for you, right? And so you have to help them understand their role in this, and why it's a good thing. Having worked at a dealership on the service side, and the body shop side, at least in the dealerships that I've been around, they couldn't be further separated. They might be sharing a wall, between the two shops, but it's two completely different worlds, and they're managed by different people. There's completely different objectives. The processes and tools are different. And I did heavy line work, which is engine work and transmission work and whatnot. It's generally the dirtiest work in the service side of the shop. And if I wanted to feel like my job was clean, I walked through the door into the body shop, and I'm like, oh, yep, my stall's clean, because it's a completely just different environment. That it feels completely foreign. And so when you pull into the service drive and you're talking to the service writer who is used to writing alignments and 30K services and whatever, and a check engine light for a 1 hour diagnostic, and you're like, I've got a forward facing camera and it needs to be calibrated. No, why? There's no light on the dash. It doesn't need to be calibrated. The rules of engagement are different, and none of the triggers that service writer is expecting as a jumping off point to get to that being the need are there. So they're going to look at you like you've got two heads. But if you develop that relationship and you help them to understand that why this is a good thing, and figure that out, they'll come around, because they're in it for the same reasons. They want to make money.
Sure.
And if you've got the space and you've got the equipment and you've got the capability to do the calibrations, there's money to be made. And if you help them figure that out, they'll come around.
Sure. Right. Yeah, because they've got the required equipment, right? They've got the targets here. They become part of the. They have to invest.
They're in a corner in the parts department somewhere.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's kind of move into the repair process now. So we've kind of got our blueprinting and our damage analysis out of the way, and we kind of got our repair plan put in place. Now, as we start moving through the repair process itself, Am I going to need that technician and that skill and that capable tool again now, or am I good till the end?
You want me to start?
Yeah, you go ahead, Josh, if you want.
All right.
Go.
From my perspective, yes. Simply put, yes. But here's why. So, okay, so you've pulled the vehicle in initially, and you did that initial inspection scan, and you found some DTCs, you found some faults of some sort, you found some indicators of further work that's going to be required. In order to deal with that, you still need a technician that knows what to do with the fault. The fact you don't fix a DTC by hitting the clear button.
No.
That does not fix the car.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. I can, I will. I feel like I have been for 8 years now.
Well, maybe we'll hear you this time.
Maybe. You don't fix a DTC by hitting the clear button. That's not the resolution. The DTC is set because there's some condition that exists that tripped a certain number of times, the certain parameters were met, and the DTC was set. That DTC may or may not set a check engine light or some other trouble indicator light. They're not always going to set a light. I know that's still hard to believe too.
No.
But the DTC is there for a reason. There's something that caused it to set, and you have to go diagnose what that is. And because it says, I'll just use something simple, because it says engine coolant temperature sensor reads low, that doesn't necessarily mean that the sensor is the problem. It could be a circuit issue. It could be a module issue. It could be that there's something else wrong with the flow of the coolant, and it happens to be getting colder coolant than anticipated because there's a hose that's routed incorrectly or whatever. It could be an actual mechanical issue. There's a number of things that could be leading to that, but you have to go diagnose it. And so in order to diagnose it, you need a technician that knows how to diagnose it, how to use the service information to perform those diagnostics, possibly use some other tools like a voltometer or something like that. But again, coming back to using the diagnostic tool to get in and look at live data. Maybe the resolution is going to be that you need to go in and actually see that sensor and it's reading live. That requires the use of the diagnostic tool and the ability to navigate the software to get to what you're looking for.
And Josh, that's a great point. It's funny that Jason brought up Mr. Allen with Audi. To your point is that, I think there's times where, insurers, third-party payers, even customers think that because, when we look these things up, that, we can see dates and times of when all these faults occurred. And so, I'll take an example of I think it was a 2016 Audi that the customer complained about the radio not working. And when we looked it up, when we scanned it and looked it up, because we were already in there, of course, it happened in the loss, right? That radio stopped working in the loss. And for some reason, which I don't know why, but the ECM said that it had stopped 200 days ago. I'm sure it was wrong, but because the customer's never wrong, but it's those types of things that, to your point, Josh, that if when you're going through the repair process, you could incur more codes by just simply pulling things off. So trim panels, front bumpers, just about it, mirrors, just about anything. You're simply fixing a door scratch, a door got keyed. And so you got to blend into the rear panel. You got to R&I get all the trim. You're unfortunately you're setting codes. And I remember a few years back, that was looked upon as air fault for some reason. Well, how else do I refinish the panel with all the components still on it? So this is something I have to do. That's what I think. That I don't know why more shops, more insurers have not embraced it, because to me, above and beyond the safety, above and beyond the relevance of what this is all what the consumer wanted, this I think proves the point on what is pre-loss, or excuse me, what is part of the loss and what isn't part of the loss, because you can isolate in most cases, you can isolate the day and time that the component failed, or to Josh's point, if you've got a cooling issue, did in that loss, did something break in the thermostat and clog the line, and so, but it's not all the way clogged. I mean, these are all the things that, unfortunately, and I'll speak for myself on this, I am not experienced in that. I've been in the collision repair business my entire life. I've not dealt with service things, so it's not something you want me to do. To that point, cannot say enough about the ability to have the air server beside next door to us, because it has saved us more than not. Having that person that does this day in and day out, time after time, experience definitely pays you.
So, backing up for just a second, you talked a little bit about, what may or may not be related to the loss. What's the first thing that your repair planner does when that vehicle's towed in or driven in and they're asking for an estimate? What's the first thing they're doing?
Well, again, the first thing that the repair planner is doing, because repair planners, as oddly as it sounds, do not write the initial,
Okay.
or that it's a blueprinter. So again, but essentially the same person, just one person deals with customers, the other one doesn't.
Okay.
So when they're doing, the first thing the repair planner is doing is discussing with the customer what happened, what took place, what else is wrong with the car. Did you hit a curb too? Did you get pushed into a curb? All these things, but we do ask the question: was there any pre-existing issues with the vehicle? And
Sure.
I would say most of the time that answer is no, and that may or may not be true.
Right. And are they then taking a walk around the vehicle at some point and documenting the current condition?
Absolutely. We are photoing every part of the vehicle, not just the four corners. There was years ago we did the four corners. Now we take photos and video of the entire vehicle.
Sure. And you do that because you want to document what the current condition is of the vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And when it was hit in the front left corner, and you're seeing some scuff marks on the bumper cover or whatever, or a door ding on the right rear door, you want to document that so that you can have that conversation at the appropriate time about what is or isn't related, what will or won't be covered, and how they'd like to either leave that alone or get it resolved as perhaps a separate line on the repair, right?
Absolutely.
So same condition here. That Audi that you were talking about with the 200-day-old radio fault. Now that you have that documented, you can have a conversation with your customer that says,
right,
maybe you're equipped to do something to resolve that, maybe you're not, but at least you can have that conversation with them and
right,
and indicate, here's something else I found while I was working on your vehicle. What would you like to do about that? And you talked a little bit earlier in response to, I think, the analogy about the dealership and the Toyota coming to the Ford dealership, and how historically the answer has always been, you don't say no. We can do it. We can handle that. Just bring in your car. We'll get it taken care of. And how now, without training and whatnot, you may be in a position where the right answer should be, no, we're not the right solution for you. It comes down to, what can you do to augment or supplement, your capabilities. It may be that training up somebody or tooling up is what's needed. It may be that finding a partner that can help you to bridge that gap is something that is the right answer, or a mix of all of the above. And we find that with a lot of our customers that we're able to help, to, provide that additional coverage, that additional support, because we do have the technicians that can specialize, and we do have the tools and software that is specialized. And so, maybe you're the Ford dealer that, doesn't know what to do with a Toyota. Well, I got a guy for that,
sure.
And we can help you.
No, and again, it's been ingrained in us from the beginning, and I would say it's still like that today, that we are supposed to be the one-stop fits all descriptions, take care of every problem that could evolve with the vehicle. Because as folks or as repairers that don't want to say no to our customer, we want to make our customer happy. We just been trained. We just don't say no. We can do that all. There's the S on the chest,
Right.
And unfortunately, specialization has taken over. You have to have someone that specializes in it. And even at that, a company like yours, Josh, even our most experienced technicians, and I feel we have some very good mechanical and service technicians. That's all that they've done. They still tell me all the time that they learn a lot from your team.
Sure.
That your team shows them things they had no idea that they could do or should do, or even more importantly, shouldn't do. So I can't say enough good things about how much they've learned from your team. So good job to you and your guys, or you and your team, for the training that you guys give, because I can't imagine what that's what that's like.
Sure.
I can't imagine what you guys have to go through to get them trained up the way that they need to be. So good job on that.
Hey, while you guys were chatting, I had a couple questions come in, so I'm going to read through these here and see if we can get them answered. One I'm going to need a little bit more clear. Who that is? Okay, looks like Josh, maybe. All right. So Khalid, your question on what's the official website for OEM relates to ADAS? Can you maybe repost and clarify that? I'm not sure exactly if I'm following you on what that question is in relationship to. If you're looking for what the OEMs say about the different ADAS systems, that's available on each of the OEMs individual service information websites. OEM One Stop is a great resource for that. The iCar repairability technical support website's got a lot of great information on it. But if you can clarify what your question is there, we can try to get that answer a little bit better for you. Chris, regarding your question on how do we effectively move the risk-based numbers to make these processes more recognized and thus part of the quality collision repair process. Chris, I think it's really about education. So the question was related to OEM requirements versus insurer potential pressure, I guess. I think it's about education, right? And I think the only way to get everybody on the same page with this is we need to keep educating everybody. We need to understand how these systems are designed to operate, what we need to do to effectively repair them and put the customer, our mutual customer, back on the road properly. When Josh and Barry and I were talking the other day, kind of prepping for this, we kind of talked about that this really, this shouldn't be a price-based decision. I mean, we need to be making sure that we're repairing the vehicle properly, regardless of who's paying the bill essentially on that. Those are my words, not theirs. But it's important that we're putting our mutual customer back on the road safely so that these systems operate as designed. And the only way to do that is going through the process that we're talking about, introducing, that scanning and diagnostics, again, just like three-dimensional measuring, into our blueprinting process, into our repair process, making sure that we have qualified technicians that understand how these systems are designed to operate and how to repair them properly. And making sure that following the repairs, we're doing our quality control. We'll get to that in a little bit as well. Getting that, how these systems are designed to operate so that we as repairers, when we take that vehicle for a test drive, or when we hand the customer their keys back, we have a relative level of confidence that the vehicle is going to design this properly. It's all of us working together is the only way that we're going to accomplish it. And having an adversarial relationship between multiple parties is certainly not going to get it done. So hopefully I kind of address that, guys. I don't know, sorry for rambling there a little bit, but I don't know if you picked up on that a little bit or not, but if you want to add anything to that, please feel free to do so.
The only thing I would add to it, Jason, is to the person who submitted the question, consistency. And what I mean by consistency is that, if carriers, third-party payers, and even your own team see consistency, that no matter what, this is the way that we do it, and this is the way that it happens. And then secondarily, we look at the pricing makeup of it. If everybody in the facility knows that this is what we're doing, we're pulling the procedures, we are going to scan it, we are going to go to the end to make sure that we're protecting our customer and their investment, then honestly, the insurer, third party payer, whatever you want to say, they are, at some point, they're going to see this is a consistent approach. This isn't something that's going away, or this isn't something where we selectively look at what a procedure is. And some things we go by, but some things we don't. The more that's a consistent approach on both sides, I think the more, and this is from my experience, the easier that concern will, or the better that concern will be managed.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I think anytime you've got you're making a decision the same way consistently, it's putting you in a position that's just much more easily defended.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I think those are great points. I think one of the challenges with this too is you can't see the damage, right? Like we're working this abstract, and ones and zeros don't really equate to what our eyes are seeing. Whereas if I've got a damaged structure, or ripping a bumper cover, or a deployed airbag, I can see that there's an issue there. Versus again, we're kind of again working that abstract environment here when it comes to what the DTCs might be telling us. Kind of back to a little bit. I know you guys kind of touched on this. I just want to dive a little bit deeper into during this repair process and the tool versus the tech. And Josh's point of, the pushing the button doesn't fix the problem. The tool doesn't fix the problem. We need to have that trained, educated technician with the proper tools. And again, it's not just going to be the diagnostic tool, but again, Josh mentioned a DVOM. We may need some other wire repair tools. We may need new sensors and parts. And so it's all that together, and having that experienced technician, I think, is really key. And we're still in this infancy when it comes to this from a collision repair standpoint. And I think when we often hear stories of collision repaired vehicles where people are like, oh, I know what that is. I've experienced this before. Same thing with the diagnostics. Over time, I think we're going to get to the point where, like, hey, you know what? I've got this code. It's this particular part of the system. I bet you it's a cut wire, an open wire, a short, based on experience. But it's going to take us some time to get there, and having that experienced technician along with a capable tool is going to make for the best make for the best repair.
Totally agree.
All right. So we touched on some of the DTCs and something that we can definitely cause during the repair process itself. And again, that's another education piece, I think, where like I can hear certain people saying like, well, that wasn't there before, right? Well, no, it's because I had to remove this particular part. So I think there's some more education needs to take place there. Now, so as we move through this, we've done our repairs now. Now we're getting towards that calibration and aiming process. Now, even if I'm not going to be doing the calibrations and aiming myself, I might be subletting that. Are there some dangers that if I don't have if I have an unqualified technician, or again, if I don't have the capable tools to kind of even get me to that point, are there some potholes there that I might need to be aware of as I go through, even if I am going to sublet the calibration aiming out?
I think there's just some general fear about calibration as a process, and that just not understanding what's happening or why it's necessary or what the implications are, and so there's this desire to kind of keep it at arm's length, and say, well, I don't want to deal with it. I'm gonna give that to somebody else. Of all these topics, I mean, this is the one where liability seems to get screamed loudest, is related to calibrations. Well, I don't want the liability. I'm gonna ship it down the road to the dealer so that they have the liability. And Barry, I know you can speak to this as probably better than the rest of us. I mean, that's not shielding you from the liability.
No.
It just, and you might even make the argument that you're bringing in more because you don't know what they did or whether they did it right. At least if you do it, you know what you did, and you know what you didn't do. And so I think, the understanding what is happening when you're doing a calibration, I think is important. And you're teaching the vehicle a known set of parameters, again, whether it's a seat weight calibration or a parking sensor or a forward-facing camera or blind spot or whatever it may be, there's a set of parameters that it needs to know and relearn. I mean, steering angle, just a really simple calibration. It's not 8S.
Right.
That was daunting at first, and I think
Right.
more and more people have come to terms with that's not a scary thing anymore. You know,
Right.
the steering angle sensor needs to know where the steering wheel is pointed. It's not rocket science, but
Right.
it's an important data point that it uses to then, you know, factor into a number of other things. And so if we go back to some of the other tools, what are you doing when you're setting up your welder and you're testing on another piece of metal that is like the same metal that you're going to weld on that vehicle? You're calibrating it.
Right.
You're verifying that this setting is going to yield that result.
Right.
You know, your 3D measuring system. What are you doing when you're going to 3 known points or whatever, and establishing that? You're establishing a calibration that is so that it now knows those 3 points. I know, you know, based on the humidity and the temperature of the arm right now, you know, if I'm using, you know, something that's got a measuring arm, you know, I now know that today those 3 points are this distance apart. And so as I now go to these other points, I know how to interpret the results. It I think the biggest thing here is to understand what those calibrations what's really happening, and take some of the mystery out of it, so that
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like this foreign process.
You know, Josh, to your point, early on years ago, we had it doesn't matter the OE, but we had a vehicle that was over on service because the mirror had been replaced along with the door, and the technician couldn't. You know, we didn't have the recalibration tools. It was a mirror, so you have to have the stand and all that. Well, he found another grid on our good friends at Google. Okay, and so he prints that up, and without saying anything, I mean, God bless him, he was trying to take the initiative to get the job done and get the customer happy. But what it did is once we, and he did it, and guess what? It calibrated. Okay, but it was, I think because again, this was a few years, or this was 5 years ago, but it was something along the lines. I think it was 2 degrees off, which doesn't sound like that much to anyone, none of us. But the customer brought the vehicle back because cars that were in front of her would trigger the blindside alert. The cars that was like 20 feet in front of her. And she kept going, she goes, it just doesn't act the same way that it used to. And we didn't know the technician had done this at the time. And this is something we all need to be aware of. So by the time she brought it back, we had the correct kit. In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, we bought it from you. We brought it from AirPro. And we had the kit and we recalibrated it. But it was amazing to me. The car finally did calibrate with that Google sheet, but it wasn't right. And that was an incredible learning experience for that technician. And I can assure you he's never done that again. Because it's we all want to make, we have a certain amount of time to get cars in and out. We're under extreme pressure to get it, to get it in and get it out. I totally get that. But unfortunately, those days of having to move quickly, move fast, are error prone. And with the type of vehicles we're working on, and let's not forget something, guys, and the whole team none of this came about without the involvement of the consumer. The consumer demanded all of this. The insurers, they demanded all these safety equipment. There's I don't know who didn't think it was going to take more time and probably cost more to repair than the cars from years ago. It's just, this is something that everybody knew was coming. Everybody wanted it to come. Now that it's here, we've got to do it right. Or if we don't, we have a major amount of liability. And I don't know that all shops recognize that. I don't know that all shops think in that way, because we live in a very litigious society. The days of a handshake agreement and yeah, Josh, I agree with you, so we'll just let this one slide this one time. Those days are over, unfortunately. We can't do that anymore.
I don't want to sound like I'm picking on your tech in that example, but you used it as an example, and what occurs to me as you're sharing that is if your tech had gone out and road tested the vehicle and had known what normal operation should be like,
Right.
that might have been a safety net, because
Totally agree.
ultimately what's happening when you're performing that calibration, the vehicle says, I'm expecting something to be kind of within these parameters.
Right.
And if you present it within those parameters, I trust that you put it where you were told to, and that you used the right target at the right location. And so the vehicle can't prove or disprove that. It's saying, I'm expecting something to be this size, that contrast, at that distance, at this height, at that angle, whatever. And if you present something and you tell me that's where it is, then I'm going to believe, the vehicle is going to believe that you've done your part correctly. And it now says, now I know how to interpret my surroundings. Well, if you hang it on the ladder and tilt it at the angle, like the YouTube video that everybody references, and you trick it, it doesn't know it's been tricked.
No.
And so now when you go out and test drive it, something about its performance, something about its behavior is going to be wrong.
Right.
Maybe all of it,
Right.
or it may just be some little element of it. And maybe now there's a blind spot in the blind spot monitor. And it can see, to the back bumper, but it can't see past the back bumper, or whatever, right? You get the idea.
And I just feel like, and Jason, not to interrupt you, I just feel like that, yeah, that fixed the shop's problem to get the car out immediately. But here's the point. I mean, and this is something for all shops, I think all of us need to keep in mind. Most consumers now, that they don't look in the mirror to see if there is an object. They look in the mirror to see if it's yellow or red, or orange or red. If it's orange, I'm getting over. If it's yellow, I'm not. And if we haven't calibrated that right, and there's a motorcyclist there, there's a bicyclist there, or just a pedestrian, or even a car, doesn't matter, and they just get it over, that liability will come back to you as the repairer. It will absolutely. Nobody's going to defend you other than your own attorney. That's the only one that's going to come to your aid. There's not an insurer. There's not a OEM, because you didn't perform it as expected. And that took me a while to accept that. It took me a while to go, hold on, in a litigious world, business is business, and we have to do it in that manner, or else we are wholly accepting all of the liability.
You want a really good example of kind of that change in behavior. Get used to driving something that's current, that has blind spot and backup detection and a backup camera, et cetera. And then go put yourself in something 50 years old that has none of the above.
Right.
And alternate days, driving one, driving the other. I'm having that experience right now. I've got my F-150 with blind spot and backup detection and forward facing camera and auto emergency braking and all of those features. And I've got my Mustang that is on the road, and I currently don't have side mirrors on it. I have a rear view mirror, but I don't have side mirrors. It's legal, but it's really interesting. You don't just not have the lights, you don't have the mirror.
Right.
So you got to do this funny thing where you turn your head in order to look. It's weird. Like, what is that about? Who has to turn their head to see whether or not they can change lanes?
Right.
So
Hey, I was doing some math while you guys were talking. So Barry, you're I know. Okay. I was asking the computer to do some math for me. Okay. Barry, your 2-degree comment earlier, I just wanted to plug that in and take a look. So I was thinking about like a forward facing camera or something, or maybe a front radar that might be in there. So 2 degrees is definitely not very much, right? Like we wouldn't be able to see 2 degrees with the naked eye, right? But at 200 feet, that represents nearly a 7-foot difference.
Wow.
So if I've got that sensor that's looking out front and it's looking for a vehicle to go like, hey, if I see a vehicle, I'm gonna want to stop, and it's pointed upwards 2 degrees too much at 200 feet, it might not be seeing something that's a smaller car, because it's 0.7 feet up from where it's supposed to be. So
Correct.
that makes a dramatic difference. And the thing that we shot a video, Chris and I shot a video down in Arkansas, kind of lighthearted, but kind of illustrate the point where we went on a hunting trip, and we had this brand new scope, right? This $1,000 scope that we put on our rifle. And we hold the gun up and scope. The crosshairs are right on the deer where it's supposed to be. We squeeze the trigger and completely missed the deer because we didn't calibrate that scope properly, and we didn't say this is where this should be when it takes place. It wasn't in sync with the rifle. And I think that's an analogy that I use a lot because a lot of us in the collision industry probably have some level of hunting background experience, and I think that's an analogy I use a lot because I think it kind of does hit home a little bit, and it's kind of what we're talking about here. So but it's definitely makes an impact, those small a few degrees. And there was that Repair Driven News article on a Honda Civic a couple of years ago that John put together based on an IIHS report. There were 6/10 of 1 degree off, 6/10 of 1 degree, and it caused a collision. I think it ended up being a 20-mile-an-hour collision by the time, and that's pretty small. I mean, we're talking very, very small differences. So it is important. And again, capable tool, qualified technician is going to make all the difference in the world when it comes to this stuff. All right. Looking, don't have any more questions coming in that I'm seeing. So let's kind of move on to our post repair and our quality control. Again, I think we kind of talked about it earlier, Josh. At the end of the process, isn't it easier to just clear the codes and send it along the way?
If they don't come back, you're good.
Yeah, exactly. We'll never know, right? So what's some of the requirements for a qualified technician, again, with capable equipment at the end of the repair process? What am I be looking for there to make sure that, again, I'm giving that customer their keys back and I have a level of confidence that the system is going to design as operators designed?
In my opinion, I think you have to take into account the whole scenario. So what repair work was done, what disassembly was done, which systems were disconnected or interfered with. If you hopefully did an inspection scan, or a pre-scan, what did you find then, so that you can potentially determine which things should be ruled out. So go back to that radio code example. I know at the post scan that I can just set that one aside. I don't need to worry about it. It's not related. I assume I've already addressed it with the customer at this point, and we've either decided to resolve it or not. So it's outside of the scope of this conversation. But I need to still have a tool that is accurate and will communicate with all the modules, and I know I can trust. And I still need a technician that knows how to navigate that tool. And so now, but I also need a technician that can be aware of everything that's just taken place and take that into consideration. Okay, so it was damage in the left front, and we know that we had to replace the left front headlight, and now we're doing a completion scan, and oh look, I've got faults related to the headlamp module, and oh wait, maybe we didn't code that headlight module. Better take a step backwards and get that taken care of. You got to have a technician that knows how to navigate all of that and take the overall repair scenario into account with the data that they're finding, and then go in and perform whatever necessary steps might be needed to kind of wrap things up. Typically at a completion scan, we're doing a lot of things related to occupant sensors and steering angle and things like that. Those are fairly common kind of final steps in the repair process that are happening at this stage. What about you, Barry?
So, one thing that from a quality control aspect, from the end of the process that we've run into, and frankly, Josh, you and your team have really helped out a lot on a lot of the vehicles that we get, especially on the steel models, the steel cars, but it doesn't have to be just steel, it'll be aluminum too. There's all these miscellaneous brackets that hold, whether it's rear sensor, whether it's rear radar, that hold these brackets or that hold these sensors, and these miscellaneous brackets that for some reason aren't in a lot of parts code or parts tables. And it's basically, these are the mounts that hold the sensors. And so we repair the quarter on this Lexus, and that mount has moved. I can't tell you how many times we have missed that. And just because we repaired it, but the mount is off slightly, and we couldn't figure out why it wouldn't calibrate. And so these are things that I know that we overlooked that, or did overlook that. We're much more diligent on it now, but we used to overlook that a lot. We never factored in that little bracket, that little mount, the way that it's angled, the way that's tilted, because it's hidden. It goes behind the bumper. And this, you mainly see this on Lexus or Mazda, but you still see it on a lot of them too, that it's hidden back behind it. And it's just, so then all of a sudden we're yelling at you guys because it won't calibrate, when once you guys diagnose and get to the bottom of it, the issue is with us, that we, this has been bent, or it's been moved, or the technicians simply RNI'd it, but didn't put it in at a twist or at an angle from where it was prior to, and
Sure.
It doesn't, and it no longer works. So these are the small, tiny things. But at the end of the day, I know this one that happened to us a few years ago. It took I want to say it was 2 or 3 days to figure this out, in hours, because it was so simplistic. Nobody thought that was the reason. Nobody thought that was a cause. And we finally, did the right thing and reached out to you guys. And, of course, you didn't see the car, you didn't know what the repair was, but you guys figured it out. But it was just something that small and that, in our mind, insignificant. And I think that's the message here, is that there is nothing that's insignificant about this and what we do. And to your point earlier, Josh, with so many different OEMs calling their systems so many different things, it's like we're speaking versions of English. We're not speaking full-blown English or the Queen's English. We're speaking versions, and we've got some slang that's going on here. And I think that for all of us, and I'm going to assume with you as well, with you and your team as well, that that's a frustration point, and that's a problem that I hope at some point some common terms will come into place, so that it makes it a little bit easier on all of us. I get it that no OE wants to do what other OEs are doing. They all want to build a better mousetrap, or in their own mind, they're building a better mousetrap. And again, I totally get that. But at the end of the day, these are the type of things that if you don't have a qualified technician, and I can't say it enough. To me, a qualified technician, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying this is your opinion or the group's opinion, but if they aren't a service technician who's used to diagnostics, who does diagnostics for a living, I don't think, I'm not saying you can't train a person up to that level, but do I think, and this is just my terms and not anyone else's, do I think the detailer, just to be blunt, should be doing it? No, I don't. In fact, I'll say hell no. Right. But conversely, I'm sure somewhere somebody's got a detailer that used to be a former diagnostic and scan technician that'll prove me wrong. I'm saying that in most cases, you have to have somebody that has experience in this, or it just doesn't work. In fact, if anything, honestly, you're wasting time. You're wasting your time, and you're putting yourself at risk along with your customer.
I can tell you, I've got an awful lot of technicians that work with me here at AirPro, and none of them were detailers before they got here.
They may have been at one point, just not now.
Maybe at one point long ago, but exactly none of them were detailers as their last job before coming to work at AirPro as a diagnostic tech. Sure. And the good news is about your point with the OEs and accepting common terminology is, I'm relatively certain they're all on board with the idea of getting to common terminology. It's just that anyone you ask, they're fine with it as long as everyone else adopts theirs.
Right. Yeah. Well said.
So as soon as that happens, it'll work out.
Just have to get all the marketing people together. That's all we need to do. Is
Yeah.
that's where
Right.
it comes from, right?
Yep.
Along that same line, and one thing that we haven't really touched on a ton today, but is a factor I think we haven't touched on just because I think we all believe it to be a known requirement, is that OEM service information. And we touched on it a little bit, but one of the important things that I think is overlooked when it comes to post-repair inspections and quality control is you need to really understand what that system is designed to do. Not only the terminology, but how that system is designed to operate, and whether that's going through the owner's manual, because a lot of that information is in the owner's
Mhm.
manual, not just the service information. If I'm taking the vehicle for a test drive and I'm expecting the vehicle to have lane keep assist where if I'm heading towards that center line or to the shoulder, if I'm expecting the vehicle to pull me back, but the vehicle is only equipped with lane departure warning, and I'm
Right.
only getting that indicator, now I might think there's something wrong with the vehicle when in fact there isn't, or vice versa. I may go, hey, everything's working properly because I'm only expecting to have lane departure warning, when in fact the lane keep assist isn't working and bringing me back to the vehicle. We need to understand what that vehicle is equipped with and how it's designed to operate.
Right.
So, and even if we get the marketing or the terminology, the names of the systems down pat, there's still maybe some variances in that. So I think it's important that we point that out. The other thing I want to point out from a post repair, and we kind of touched on calibration. We focus, I think, more on the ADAS systems, but a lot of these times we're disconnecting batteries, which is going to necessitate several relearn requirements for the maybe the moonroof, or maybe for the lift gate, or maybe for the steering wheel position sensors, things that we weren't even like, why am I recalibrating the lift gate in this vehicle when it was involved in a slow frontal collision?
Right.
Again, referring that service information and looking at those requirements is going to help in the long run, because again, having that lift gate not open for that customer, that's not going to be the customer's not going to be very happy. Is it a safety issue? Not necessarily.
Right.
It's definitely a customer satisfaction issue, and it's our responsibility. We're the reason that lift gate isn't functioning properly, because we didn't take the time to read the information
Sure.
and learn and understand all the systems associated. So I think that's part of that qualified technician conversation as well.
Yeah. I mean, using your example for lane departure warning, even if you know it's lane departure warning and it's not going to do anything to keep you in the lane, it's just going to warn you.
Right.
If you're used to one where it's going to rumble the seat,
Yeah.
and this one only has an audio or visual indicator, then again, you're expecting a result that you're not going to get by design.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of how that vehicle is designed to operate, and that road test is critical. And it's different than the road test of years ago. In fact, I'm inclined to not even call it the same thing.
No.
A road test to go out and verify whether there's a pull, whether there's a shimmy when it's braking or whatever, is different than I believe one of our industry colleagues kind of came up with the term of dynamic system verification test, and it works. It's a good description, and so you've got dynamic systems and you're verifying that they're working, and that is different, and the conditions that you need to verify them under are different.
Mm-hmm.
The little 1 mile loop that runs on a couple of back roads around behind the back of your shop is fine for the road test, for the shakedown, if you will. But to go out and do the dynamic system verification test, it may require highway speeds for a sustained period of time. It may require that the lines on the road are visible, which is going to make it difficult for you right now, Jason. Those are just conditions that you have to figure out how to account for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and one thing that we can't forget for all of us, and again, another sad tale of us learning the hard way, is the maintainer. Let's not forget about the battery maintainer that has to be there. And here's even more of an important thing. I think a lot of places think that if they're using the maintainer, because without it, as both of you know, you're going to get you have the potentiality to have a lot of false codes, because you're not maintaining a consistent level. But here's even, if you throw a battery charger on there, that's not a maintainer. and you're really doing more harm than good. You couple this with, if you use a maintainer on a lithium ion battery, which all of us can laugh at, but they're starting to come in OEs now. Those lithium ion batteries without programming are $1,800. And you throw a battery charge on it, you fry it. It's no good. They will not warranty it. They'll know exactly what you did because they can look in the module and see. And so, you know, it's all these crazy things that we have to deal with just 2 years ago, much less now, or much less 10 years ago. So, you know, the maintainer is a critical component of that too, Jason. And there's different levels of maintainers that you have to use. You know, again, that if we think that the lithium ion battery, and again, I'm referring to the 12 volt, not a hybrid or a, you know,
Right.
EV, but, you know, the lithium ion battery, if you don't have the correct charge, or you can hear it bust. You can hear it break. You can hear the pin snap, and you know, again, the car won't even start. And so,
Right.
you know, those are some critical things that I go back to the same thing. You don't know what you don't know, but we can't assume that we can make decisions from 5, 10, or even 3 years ago based upon today's vehicle, because it is just changing so rapidly.
And even the decision to use that battery maintainer and what type of battery maintainer to use is make, model, and year specific.
Right.
Because there are some applications where I believe you're discouraged from using a battery maintainer,
Right.
because it, for in their belief, right, for that OE, their system, their architecture, they think it's going to cause different issues, or
Right.
you know,
Right.
or they've shown that it causes different issues. So
Correct.
so full circle again, right? I mean, what
Right.
do we call this session, right? The tool or the tech, which is more important? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
it's both, but it comes down to the capability and experience of both and how they complement one another.
Yeah.
You know, you need a tech that knows how to use the tool. You need a tool that is capable of doing the procedures that you need, and both of them need to be compatible, if you will, with the vehicle and the repairs that you're trying to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Well said.
Hey, Josh, can you go give us that term again? Is that a Chuck term or a Daryl term? I forget. Your dynamic.
Daryl, dynamic system verifications test.
One more time.
Dynamic system verifications test.
All right, cool.
That's
Hopefully,
Mr.
we were able to
Amberson,
answer the
all the
question.
way.
Okay, perfect. And we also have a comment on here. Thank you for highlighting the battery maintainers. That's another great point. So, guys, anything in closing?
I always enjoy these. I think it's great. I'm glad we had some folks out there with some questions. Hopefully we got them answered for you. You know, no offense to present company, but I hope there comes a time where we don't have to keep talking about DTCs and engine lights and why it's important to do a calibration.
Awesome. Thank you. Barry, you got anything to add?
Yes, sir. The only thing I was going to add is just, to my peers out there, the main thing I'll say is that, again, don't let anyone influence what you know is right for your customer and what's right for your business. I cannot emphasize that enough. There's any group that wants to pay less, and we as consumers want to as well. The only thing I would say is that, again, unfortunately, the collision repairer didn't ask for all this. The consumer did, the insurer did. So all we're trying to do is give them back what they had. If we think we can do it, or we can go around the system, or we can get around this, those days are over. And there's a lot of other powers at play that prevent us from getting around it. So stop trying to. Make it a part of your daily system. Make it a part of your consistent process, and you will save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of liability at the end.
Awesome. Great stuff, guys. Certainly want to thank Barry for taking time out of his schedule. He certainly didn't have to do this, but I really appreciate it. It's good to see you, my friend. It's been way too long. And Josh, thank you as always. Good seeing you. Good talking to you. Barry, safe travels on your way down south. Sorry
Yes, sir.
about the weather you're going to have, and more sorry what your companions are going to be with on your upcoming trip. But good seeing you. Safe travels, and thanks for everybody tuning in today. Thanks for those of you watching on Facebook Live. We are recording this, so we will make this available in other venues as well. But guys, thank you very much, and appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Bye bye, everybody.